What's up, YouTube? I'm here to do my prediction video for UFC Fight Night Dillashaw versus Cruz. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Francisco, I'm not even going to try to say this guy's last name, it's too hard, versus Elvis Maitusic. I know who Elvis is. He's really good. If you ever watch like World Series of Fighting, I think he's one of the better middleweights on that show. That promotion. I think he's super well-rounded, and I think he's a legit guy. I think he's kind of like Lyman Good from Bellator. He's kind of underrated. The only weakness he really has is that sometimes he gets held down by really strong wrestlers, and he can't do much once he's there. But luckily, he's fighting a guy who isn't a very good wrestler. He's just kind of a kickboxer that isn't a great kickboxer. So I'm going to pick Elvis. I think it'll be a slight upset, but I say he wins by knockout in the first round. Next is Rob Font versus Joey Gomez, and this is basically two strikers going up against each other, but I think Rob Font is just a little bit more well-rounded. And if he needs to lean on his wrestling or his jiu-jitsu, I think he could definitely use that to his advantage. So I'll pick Rob Font. I say he wins by decision, maybe a late submission. Next is Ilir Latifi versus Shane O'Connell. And to me, this is probably one of the closest fights on the whole cards. I think that striking-wise, I think O'Connell's a little bit, he throws a bit more volume and he's a bit more technical. I think Ilir Latifi has more power. I think the big key factor is Ilir's wrestling, but he hasn't really used it that much since he's gone to the UFC. I think he used it one time in that fight against Cyril Diabate and a little bit against Gegard, but you know what I mean, he really hasn't shown too much of his wrestling game. I feel like if he really needs to mix up in this fight, because if he doesn't, I think Shane O'Connell will probably win by TKO late in the third, just with his pace. I'm going to pick O'Connell just because I don't think Ilir Latifi's going to mix in his wrestling. But like I said, if he does, and you think he does, I'm pretty positive he'll win this fight. But like I said, I'm going to pick Shane O'Connell by late TKO. Next is Charles Rosa versus Augusto Mendez. And I feel like Augusto, if he wasn't taking this fight on a few days' notice, it'd probably be a lot closer. But he is only taking this fight on a few days' notice. I think him and Rosa have pretty similar skill sets. I just think Rosa has already fought in the octagon a couple of times, and he's looked pretty decent in all those fights. So I'll pick Rosa to win by submission. Like I said, I wish that Augusto had had a little bit more time to train for this, but unfortunately, like I said, he only got a couple days. So I'll pick Charles Rosa by submission. Next is Paul Felder versus Darren Cruikshank. And this is kind of a fight between two guys who are in the same spot. They really need to win. They're both kind of guys that people thought were going to be big contenders, and they're kind of on losing streaks right now. I'm going to pick Felder just because he's looked decent in his last two losses, as where Darren Cruikshank's just got run over. You know what I mean? He's got submitted in the first round super quick. Paul Felder, at least, you know, the fight with Ross Pearson was really close. It could have went either way. And the fight with, sorry, I'm a little burpy. The fight with Edson Barboza was a really fun back-and-forth fight of the night fight. So I'm going to pick Paul Felder. I say he wins by TKO. I just feel like he'll be able to pressure Cruikshank and not let him use his Taekwondo to get space. Next is Maximo Blanco versus Luke Saunders. And I think Luke Saunders is, once again, another good prospect, but he's only taking this fight on a few days' notice, and I feel like that's going to hurt him. I feel like he's a good striker. Not too much else. He's got pretty good takedown defense, but I feel like his cardio is probably going to start to fail him come the second, and Maximo Blanco is probably going to take over. And I say Blanco probably gets a late second round TKO. It's just unfortunate that a lot of these guys are late nose replacements. Next is Chris Wade versus Mehdi Baghdad. He was the guy in the Ultimate Fighter, the French guy, who had a record like 11-3. And this is a pure striker versus pure grappler. And once again, this is another fight where it was supposed to be like Mirsad Shumov versus Chris Wade. So it's another injury replacement fight. And I feel like Chris Wade is just going to be able to take this guy down over and over again and win by decision. It sucks for Mehdi because I feel like he's a pretty exciting guy. And I would have loved to have seen him go up against like another striker for his first UFC fight, but they need a late replacement, and unfortunately got a super good wrestler. So I don't expect this fight to be great. I just expect Chris Wade to get takedowns over and over again and maybe get a late submission. Next is Tim Bosch versus Ed Herman. And I think, once again, this is another fight just like the Paul Felder fight. It's two guys who are kind of at this weird crossroads where they've done decently, but now they're kind of on losing streaks. And now they kind of need a win to stay somewhat relevant. Um, to me, the biggest thing is, will this fight get out of the first round? I think that both these guys could knock each other out in the first round, but the longer this fight goes, I think it favors Herman. I think Tim Boesch has shown really shitty cardio over his last couple of fights. I think that's the main reason he's lost the last couple of his fights, is just, aside from the Dan Henderson one, was just that he started to get tired and the other guy was able to take over. And I have a weird feeling this fight's going to be like the fight with Taos Ladies he had, where he'll be winning, he'll have his moments, but then he'll start to get tired, and Ed Herman will take over and get a late submission, probably in the third. I know I'm picking a lot of late finishes, but that's just the feelings I'm getting from most of these fights. I feel like this fight will be exactly like the Taos Ladies fights, where it'll be back and forth, Tim Boesch will have his moments, then he'll start to gas, and then Ed Herman will get a late finish. Next is Patrick Cote versus Ben Saunders, and both these guys are in the exact same spot. They're kind of mid-tier guys that need one more win over another mid-tier guy before they get a top 15 guy. And to me, Ben Saunders has always been a guy that I thought was really good. I just think he kind of had a hard time against the really good wrestlers. But he's looked amazing since he's come back to the UFC. And I'm going to pick him by submission. I just feel like his striking is really good. And he'll be able to get Patrick Cote to the ground. And when he does get Patrick Cote to the ground, he'll probably win by submission. Next is Ross Pearson versus Francisco Trinaldo. And this is another one of those fights where I feel like the longer this goes, it favors Ross. But I'm going to pick Trinaldo just because I feel like his striking's gotten so much better. And he clearly has much more punching power. I think this is going to be a lot like Francisco's last fight against the Canadian guy who won the Ultimate Fighter. I can't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure if you know who I'm talking about, you'll know who I'm talking about. I feel like he fights exactly like how Ross fights, and Trinaldo will probably have the same game plan where he'll wait and counter and probably clip Ross as a big shot and win by knockout. Next is Travis Brown versus Matt Mitrione. And I feel like this is a weird fight that like a lot of people want to see, just because I know that both these guys have been considered like two of the most athletic heavyweights in the division. They fight a lot alike and they look a lot alike. But to me, it's not even close. I think it's pretty clear which one of them is the superior fighter. I think they're both amazing athletes, but in terms of their fight ability, Travis Brown is like, levels above fucking Matt Mitrione. Which sucks for Matt Mitrione because I think he's the type of guy that they need to just, slowly build up. He never had fight. Travis Brown was 10-0 when he came to the UFC. Matt Mitrione, his record is 9-4, and all those fights are in the UFC. So, it's just unfortunate that he had like no experience coming in the UFC, and now they're feeding him to these guys because my dog is attacking me. Just because they want to, have a fun fight for the fans, but it's clear who's going to win. One of these guys is much better than the other. Anyway, next is Anthony Pettis versus Eddie Alvarez, and to me this fight is pretty easy. Not easy. I'm sorry, the dog's attacking me. I feel like if this fight stays standing, Pettis will probably win by knockout. But the biggest thing to me is Pettis has shown an inability to stop takedowns against guys that can kind of mix in their takedowns. Like you look at Guida and you look at what's his face, RDA. And to me, I feel like Eddie Alvarez is probably better than the two of them at that. I'm not saying he's better than RDA, but at mixing in strikes with takedowns, I think Eddie Alvarez is better than Guida and RDA. And I feel like that's Pettis' biggest weakness is when he doesn't see the takedowns coming. Like, when he fought Gilbert Melendez and Ben Henderson, they don't really mix in their takedowns well. They just kind of go for takedowns or they'll strike. I feel like that's Eddie's biggest strength. One of his biggest strengths is that he's good at mixing it up with his wrestling, with his boxing. So I'm going to pick Alvarez by decision. I just feel like he'll be able to do that. Just use boxing and wrestling to get the unanimous decision. And finally, we got the main event, TJ Dillashaw versus Dominic Cruz. I just feel like Dominic Cruz never lost that belt. He's the one that created that style that Dillashaw used to win the belt. And I still feel like his movement is way better than TJ's. I just feel like TJ's footwork is better, but I just feel like Cruz has better hand movement and body movement. I feel like Cruz is just the better fighter between the two of them. And I feel like we're going to see that through 5 rounds of this fight, is that it'll be much harder for TJ to catch him than it'll be for Cruz, the opposite way. So I'll pick Cruz to win by decision, maybe a TKO. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.